One of the biggest heartbreaks in Phillies history happened on Thursday night. What's next for the team? Where do they go from here? And more after the Phillies have been eliminated from the 2025 MLB playoffs. We're going to get into all of that today here on the newest episode of Phillies Digest. And yeah, I said it at the top. This is that was one of the worst endings to a baseball game I think I've ever seen. It could be up there as the worst I've ever seen with my own two eyes. A 1-1 game throughout. It's a pitcher's duel, and all of a sudden, a walk-off error made by Orion Kerkering ends the 2025 Phillies season. This is the first time I really have talked about the game. I wrote a little bit for Crossing Broad if you want to go check that out, but I couldn't even get thoughts together after that ending last night. It's just you can't even fathom how heartbreaking of a way it is to get eliminated from the playoffs than the way that it happened last night. But the season is over. A really good regular season turned into a 3-1 loss to the Dodgers, a really good baseball team in the NLDS. But where do the Phillies go from here? And there's time to think about this. Free agency goes through the winter, but you start to pull up these names, and this team has the chance to look different next year. Phillies that will be free agents once the World Series concludes: JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Ranger Suarez, Max Kepler, Jordan Romano, David Robertson, Tim Meza, Walker Buehler, Lou Trevino. Obviously, the guys at the bottom aren't as big as priorities as those three guys on top there. And also Phillies with contract options. Jose Alvarado has a club option, and Harrison Bader has a mutual option. And, I think when you go down this list, the four you really look at on this tweet here is JT Realmuto, the backbone of this pitching staff, and the brick wall and the bone behind the plate. Kyle Schwarber, although he didn't have a great NLDS, 56 homer season, he's already one of the best home run hitters in the history of the Phillies, and one of the best clubhouse guys, I think, in all of baseball. Ranger Suarez, deals with injuries throughout the season, but, death taxes and Ranger Suarez coming up in a big spot and just battling. And then Harrison Bader at the bottom. Bader comes here at the trade deadline, and while this was a career year for him, really gave a spark to this Phillies team. So that's really the big four. Kyle Schwarber spoke last night after the game, as did a lot of the players, and easily the most emotional that I've ever seen Kyle Schwarber since he got to Philadelphia. He was tearing up. You could see in the video his lip was like quivering the whole time. It was a really sad video to watch. Because, I think Kyle Schwarber wants to be back, and I guarantee you the Phillies want him back, but free agency gets crazy, and no matter what happens, no matter how loved you are somewhere, there's no guarantee that Kyle Schwarber is back next year. I think it's likely, but it's not guaranteed. And, just one of the worst ways, I think, to possibly ever end a baseball game. And, yeah, I know, the issue here with Kerkering is, everyone just go to first base, just go to first base. Once Kerkering bobbles that ball, I think he just completely lost everything. I genuinely believe that he lost every thought in his mind, and he saw the guy going home, and he thought he had to get there. And it's unfortunate. It's a 24-year-old kid who's, do or die right now on the mound. And yeah, the Phillies have to go to him because he's one of your top righties. And, you think about Orion Kerkering, the person today, because, it's not an easy situation, especially for a 24-year-old kid who's only been in the league for 2.5 years. This is something that can make or break a career. When, it probably feels like Orion Kerkering has the whole city of Philadelphia against him right now. It's one of the most heartbreaking. It's got to be the most heartbreaking thing these guys have ever gone through on a baseball field. And it's one of the worst that I've ever watched. Just, from that. But you look at this picture, and I know it's easy to put all the blame on Kerkering. I understand. He fields the ball. He throws a clean throw to first, or even throws a clean throw to home. This game goes to the 12th inning. But if you don't hit, you don't win. And I think it's that simple. Trey Turner 0 for 5. Kyle Schwarber 1 for 5. Bryce Harper 0 for 4. Brandon Marsh 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Max Kepler 0 for 3. Had a big walk there, but, Nick Castellanos, the one with the big hit last night. Bryson Stott 0 for 4. You go down, you look at these averages throughout the NLDS. Schwarber hit 188. Harper hit 200. Marsh hit 077. Max Kepler hit 167, even though I actually thought Max Kepler had a pretty good series. Bryson Stott hit 154. When it comes down to it, if you don't hit, you don't win. And I think that's been, the saying of the Phillies for the last couple years in the playoffs is they've gotten there, they've had a great regular season, and then they just kind of fall apart. And it's the day after you get eliminated is always weird because a lot of things, fly through your brain and everything. What's the future of Rob Thomson? What's the future of this team? I will say, I liked this quote from Rob Thomson after the game last night. Somebody asked Thomson about, thinking about his future as the manager, and Rob Thomson said, "I'm not even thinking about my job right now. I've got 60 people in there that are brokenhearted right now. I'm thinking about that a lot more than my job right now." And it's pretty obvious, whatever you think about Rob Thomson from a managing standpoint, that manager loves his players, and that's not always the case across the league. And this team is such a tight-knit team, and it's just unfortunate that they keep coming up short, with the same issues that they've had in years past. Orion Kerkering makes that error. JT Realmuto, runs right to Kerkering. Nick Castellanos sprints in from right field and goes right and throws a hand on Kerkering's shoulder. There's been videos going around of the guys sitting with Kerkering in the dugout after the game. There was another one. Kyle Schwarber, came out after he talked to the media because Kerkering was out in the dugout by himself after the game, and Schwarber went out and talked to him and told him to come back into the clubhouse because they don't have much. In that moment, they didn't have a ton of time left together, this team. And Schwarber doesn't want Kerkering to sit there and just think all of this is his fault, because it's not. It's a play that should have been made. But if other stuff happened during that game, there's probably a game 5 on Saturday. And it's unfortunate, and it sucks. Losing sucks. It's the worst. Watching your team lose is even worse. But now the offseason is here. And there's going to be decisions that have to be made about multiple things: the manager future, the players' future, just what the future of this team looks like. But for now, take a deep breath. It sucks. It's sad. It's the worst way to end. But it was a hell of a regular season. And it's unfortunate that it ended this way. Thank you guys for, being here this entire season with myself and Sean Bernard. We're going to have a ton of content every single day this offseason about, free agency, and what's going on with the team. But if you do want to follow myself on Twitter at Arcaini Luke, and I believe it's Sean_Bernard1. If you look up Sean Bernard, you'll find him. Both of us are very active on Twitter as well. But yeah, this sucks, and that loss is gonna hurt for a while. But sometimes that's baseball, and you got to get up and move on, and hope Orion Kerkering takes us as a learning moment and comes back stronger, because that's all he can really do at this point. This has been the newest episode of Phillies Digest. My name is Luke Arcaini, and I will see you guys next time.